Tommy, in fact, I think was a very courageous thing to do in 1969, I think it was.
Right.
George Martin walked into Abbey Road Studios as a classical musician. He walked out as the man who changed popular music forever. Before the Beatles, he produced comedy records and jazz. He understood the timing, structure, how to capture performances that felt alive. But he saw music differently than most producers. He heard orchestras where others heard guitars, heard possibilities where others heard limitations.
And we still have the old tapes, and this is an old box, and they're 1-inch tapes.
Martin's genius was translation. He took Paul McCartney humming string parts and turned them into Yesterday, took John Lennon's Carnival Dreams and created Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. He didn't just capture the Beatles, he enhanced them, elevated them, made their wildest ideas tangible. His classical training met their raw talent. The collision created something neither could achieve alone. Behind every revolutionary Beatles recording sat Martin at the mixing desk, calm, thoughtful, figuring out how to make the impossible possible. He treated the studio like an instrument. Tape speed, reverb, orchestration. Everything was a tool waiting for proper use. His favorite albums weren't just records he enjoyed, they were lessons in craft, innovation, how to serve the artist while pushing boundaries. Here are the 7 albums George Martin treasured, the ones that shaped how he heard music. Subscribe if production fascinates you. Which shaped modern recording most? 7. Goldberg Variations. George Martin's classical foundation began with Bach. Glenn Gould's 1955 recording of the Goldberg Variations changed how Martin understood performance. Gould didn't just play Bach, he reimagined it, took harpsichord music and made it sing on modern piano. His interpretation was controversial, fast tempos, unusual dynamics, but it was undeniably alive. Martin heard someone refusing convention, making old music new through sheer force of vision. Gould's precision was astounding. Every note is perfectly placed.
Artists, by going to Tin Pan Alley and listening to all the publishers' wares, there was a...
Yet it never felt mechanical. Humanity shone through mathematics. Bach's architecture became an emotional landscape. Martin studied this balance. How could something be technically flawless and deeply moving simultaneously? That question would define his production philosophy. The Beatles needed to be in tune, in time, but they also needed to feel real. Gould showed both were possible. The recording itself was revolutionary. Close mic'd piano, intimate sound. You could hear Gould humming occasionally. Some producers would have edited that out. The engineer left it, made the performance more human. Martin absorbed this lesson. Technical perfection mattered, but so did capturing the person behind the instrument. Later, he'd leave in the Beatles' studio banter, their laughter, their humanity. Gould proved that classical music could be radical, that respecting tradition didn't mean being trapped by it. 6. Sketches of Spain. George Martin discovered Miles Davis and Gil Evans' 1960 collaboration and heard production as an art form. Sketches of Spain was jazz meeting classical, meeting flamenco. Evans' orchestral arrangements were breathtaking, lush, complex. Yet Miles's trumpet cut through everything with simple beauty. The balance was perfect, neither overwhelming the other.
Live album. We'd never done this. For the first time, let's make a live album of original music.
Martin studied how Evans orchestrated, how he gave Miles space to breathe while surrounding him with orchestral color. Concierto de Aranjuez adapted Rodrigo's classical piece for jazz ensemble. 18 minutes of Miles playing with a Spanish orchestra. The production was spacious, reverberant. Each instrument had its own location in the stereo field. Martin paid attention. How you place sounds mattered as much as the sounds themselves. Later, he'd use these techniques on Beatles recordings, placing voices in one speaker, instruments in another, creating dimension. What fascinated Martin was Evans' courage. Using a full orchestra in a jazz context was risky. Radio wanted 3-minute songs. This was art for its own sake, but the artistry made it essential. Martin would remember this when the Beatles wanted sitars, when they wanted 40-piece orchestras on pop songs. Evans proved ambition could succeed if executed brilliantly. This album showed Martin that the producer and arranger were creative partners, that their vision could equal the performer's contribution. 5. In the wee small hours.
While the whole wide world is fast asleep.
Frank Sinatra's 1955 album taught George Martin about emotional architecture. This was the first concept album, 15 songs exploring loneliness and heartbreak. Nelson Riddle's arrangements were subtle masterpieces, strings that ached, woodwinds that sighed. Everything supports Sinatra's voice without competing.
Beatles music has touched every single person on the planet.
Martin recognized this as a production genius, knowing what to add, knowing what to remove, serving the emotion above all else. Sinatra sang these songs at 3 a.m. sessions. His voice is raw from cigarettes and whiskey. Capitol Records could have fixed it, smoothed it. Martin knew they were right to leave it alone. That rasp was honest. That wear was real. The imperfection made it perfect. Later, when John Lennon wanted his voice to sound more real, Martin understood. Sometimes polish destroys truth. The sequencing created a journey, opening with "In the wee small hours of the morning," building through mounting desperation, ending without resolution, just acceptance. Martin learned that album order mattered, that flow between songs could tell stories. Sgt. Pepper's would later use this exact approach, creating unified experience rather than random collection. Sinatra and Riddle proved that popular music deserves serious treatment, that craftsmanship elevated rather than constrained, that you could break hearts in 3 minutes if every element served that purpose. 4. The chirping crickets.
Oh boy, the whole world can see that you were meant for me.
George Martin heard Buddy Holly's 1957 debut and recognized Peer. Norman Petty produced these sessions in Clovis, New Mexico. The sound was clean, bright. Holly's voice recorded with a slight echo. Guitars positioned perfectly. Drums punchy without overwhelming. Petty understood what Martin would later prove. The producer's job was making artists sound like their best selves, not imposing foreign vision. That'll Be the Day opened with drums counting in. Unusual for 1957, most productions erased these moments. Petty left it, made the recording feel live, present. Martin noted this.
But it is something that moves people so immensely, and it comes from here. It's part of humanity.
Years later, he'd count in "I Saw Her Standing There" the same way. Those human touches connected listeners to performances, made records feel immediate. Holly's arrangements were deceptively sophisticated. Vocal harmonies are perfectly stacked, guitar parts interlocking, everything recorded simply but positioned brilliantly. Martin studied Petty's economy, how to achieve maximum impact with minimal fuss. Not every song needed an orchestra. Sometimes guitar, bass, and drums were enough. If recorded properly, the innovation was in the details. Double-tracking Holly's voice occasionally, adding hand claps for texture, using studio techniques subtly, never drawing attention to production itself, just making great songs sound greater. Martin built his career on this philosophy. Technology served music, not the other way around. 3. A Christmas Gift for You. Phil Spector's 1963 Christmas album showed George Martin the opposite extreme. Where Sinatra was subtle, Spector was bombastic. His wall of sound technique layered dozens of instruments, multiple pianos, multiple guitars, echo chambers, everything compressed into massive sonic force. The Ronettes, Darlene Love, the Crystals all singing with orchestras behind them. Martin recognized revolutionary production, completely different from his own approach, but undeniably powerful. Spector didn't capture performances. He built them, overdub by overdub, layer by layer, creating sounds that couldn't exist live. The studio as an instrument concept was taken to extremes. Martin admired the ambition even when the aesthetic wasn't his own. Later, when the Beatles wanted bigger sounds, Spector's influence appeared. The orchestra on A Day in the Life, the production density of Strawberry Fields Forever. What Martin took from Spector was courage. Don't accept limitations. If technology doesn't exist, invent it. If you need 50 instruments, use 50. Spector never asked permission. He demanded excellence and found ways to achieve it. That fearlessness inspired Martin. When Paul wanted backwards guitars, Martin figured it out. When they wanted tape loops, he made it happen. Spector proved producers could be auteurs. That production itself was a creative expression. Martin just chose different paintbrushes. 2. Pet Sounds. Brian Wilson's 1966 masterpiece arrived when George Martin was producing Revolver. Both albums pushed boundaries simultaneously. Wilson used unconventional instruments everywhere: bicycle bells, barking dogs, harpsichords, theremins. His arrangements were dense but clear. Every element is audible. Every choice is purposeful. Martin heard someone working at his own level, taking pop music seriously as an art form. Wilson's production techniques fascinated Martin. He'd record instruments at different speeds, build vocal harmonies layer by layer, use echo and reverb as compositional tools. God Only Knows featured French horn and accordion in a love song. Shouldn't have worked, became perfect. Martin understood. Sometimes the wrong instrument was exactly right. He'd put a sitar on Norwegian wood shortly after hearing this. The ambition was staggering. Wilson was deaf in one ear, produced in mono, yet created sonic landscapes richer than most stereo recordings. That paradox intrigued Martin. Limitations forced creativity. Later, working with 4-track recording, Martin would make albums that sounded like they used 40. Wilson showed constraints could be advantages if you were inventive enough. Pet Sounds validated Martin's belief that producers should be collaborators. Wilson co-wrote the songs but also realized them sonically. The production wasn't separate from composition, it was composition. Martin would take this even further with the Beatles. 1. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. George Martin chose the album he produced, not ego, honesty. Sgt. Pepper's, from 1967, represented everything he believed music could be. The Beatles brought raw talent and endless ideas. Martin brought classical training and studio mastery. Together, they created something unprecedented, an album as unified artwork, every song flowing into the next. Production is as integral as songwriting. Recording took 4 months, 700 hours. They used 4-track recording, but bounced between machines to build layers. That tabla on Within You Without You, the orchestra on A Day in the Life, the backward guitar on I'm Only Sleeping. Each innovation required problem solving. Martin figured out solutions, made impossible possible. What made this album sacred was collaboration. Paul would hum string arrangements. Martin would transcribe and orchestrate them properly. John would describe fever dreams. Martin would translate them into studio techniques. George Harrison wanted authentic Indian music. Martin found the musicians. Ringo needed a circus atmosphere. Martin created it. His classical background met their instincts. The fusion was magic. This album proved Martin's entire philosophy. Producers should elevate artists, should enable vision, should bring technical expertise without imposing aesthetics, should serve the music above all. Sgt. Pepper's changed what albums could be, changed what production meant. Martin's finest moment, not because he led, because he followed brilliantly. George Martin never chased the spotlight. These 7 albums taught him craft, courage, and collaboration. His production soared because these masters showed him flight. What album changed recording forever? Share below. Subscribe for stories about artists behind artists, the ones who made magic from the shadows.